Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. A little bit different from our regular sort of videos, but I figured we'd do a bit of a sculpting video, lack of a better word. So, this will be a bit of a improv situation, but I'll go through a few steps of my random sculpting process, as well as trying to break down the difficulties of sculpting. So often people will overcomplicate it very quickly. There's a lot of benefits to be had with sculpting and doing retopology, as opposed to polymodeling, where we're pulling out faces and verts. Namely, in my case, I use it for a lot more control of sharp edges and still being in a great deal of control of my poly count. But anyhow, let's get into it. So at the moment, I've got this. I've laid a couple of guides out. It's probably a little bit tall, but oh well. So we have one, two, let's change this over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. Yeah, we'll just do it 7.5. So this is a 7.5 head proportion body. We've roughly got the crotch coming close to about 3.7, 3.8. Yeah, 3.8. There's a good ratio to be had here. So, a good rule of thumb when proportioning things, rather than doing things split in half, it's good to use prime numbers. So we've got 2, 3, 7, etc. Just numbers that can only be divided by themselves or 1. But there's a good ratio between 2 over 3, 2 over 7, 3 over 7, etc. So that's sort of how I work with my proportioning. So they're slight estimates, obviously. This was 8. Yeah, it'd match up. Anyhow, let's get rid of some of these. Okay. So, let's jump in. I'm going to start off with a cube. Cube? No, I'll start off with a UV sphere. Yep, that's good. Let's bring this up. Let's change that bit of bounding box. Now, at this stage, everything is just guides. There's no need for any details yet. Be putting the knee roughly about there. Ankle down there. We've got shoulders, which will come roughly there. About almost a head wide on each side. We got a rough idea of our side view. Pull that back. Knee can go there, that's fine. Okay. So that's it. We've got our rough proportions. We'll come back and do some arms soon. Let's jump into sculpt mode. I'm going to use the grab brush. Make it roughly the same size as the actual sphere. And I'm going to drag that up. Would help if I had symmetry turned on. Just trying to get the shape of the rib cage. Just a little bit bigger. There we go. Switch to our profile view. Now, a really powerful tool that I like to use in newer version of Blender is Grab 2D. Since it really does what the silhouette grab should do, where it grabs the 2D shape from the viewport and then drags that. Keeps things the same in one direction, roughly. But at this stage, let's just carefully move that around. Okay, now we'll jump to our hips. Now, there's a couple of things that we're going to do here. So I'm actually going to get a second sphere. Raise that one up. Now this bottom one, we will come over to the side view. Use the normal grab brush. Nice big size. Push that in. Push that in. We're not too concerned about making the buttocks just yet. Come back to our other sphere. Pull that in. That is good. Now I'm going to squish said sphere sides. This is essentially our stomach and our abdominals. Abdominal muscles. Yeah, words. Grab that from the top. I'll push this quite far in because the backside of this sphere doesn't actually matter a whole lot to us. Now, I am realizing the ribcage is a little bit high, and even in my profile view, I had to pull down a bit more. Let's fix that. Okay, I will use our 2D brush for this one. Make that a little bit smaller. Put that out. Flatten that front view. There we go. Wonderful. Push that back. Excellent. Okay, next, let's jump back to our hips. You know what? I will make separate spheres for this one. Bring it up a little bit higher. This one's going to be our actual hip bones that come up to the side. It's also a good indicator where our belly button's going to be. So let's go grab symmetry, pull that up, bring that out. Nice big brush, push that in, and I'm going to drag that out. This is just using the normal grab, not the 2D. And the hips tend to be quite close. Like that. Yep. Excellent. Next, I will pull a copy of that up nice and high. I'll scale that on the X. Just push that in just a tiny bit. So I'm just scaling on the X axis. This just fills out that space in between our hips and the top of our rib cage. Next, I'll jump into sculpt. Push this back in. Now, there is a tendency for this sort of spot to actually be responsible for a lot of the fat. So what might be worthwhile here? We'll grab clay strips and just remesh that using our R key and then Control R. Just fill a little bit in there. Nice strip there, and I want it to go up. Now it's a little bit wide on the side without it intentionally meaning that. Just going to push that in, and then I'm going to drag it up. Okay, I need to inflate just a tiny bit there. Smooth very lightly. Grab, and I'll just tuck that in tiny bit more. Pull it down just a little bit. Okay. That's looking pretty good. I'll just turn that off so we can see. Nothing too complex, and we've got the basis of a lot of our anatomical structure. Okay, let's add a shoulder while we're keeping things nice and simple. I'm going to add a cube for this one. I'll tap into edit mode. Bring that over a little bit. Ooh, sorry. I will loop cut that around. Now these sides, just gonna pull down just so I get that shape. I'm gonna put one cut through the center. Gonna grab all the verts on the top and scale that on the y-axis, and then scale on the x. Excellent. Now I'll grab all of these, pull them up. Wait. There we go. That was weird. Grab the center, pull that on the X. And these guys pull out just a tiny bit. Maybe the top ones. Let's put one lip cut there. Just so I can get a little bit more. Okay, from the top view, I'm gonna grab that, tilt you in, tilt you there. Probably a little bit big at the moment, but oh well. Grab that, scale everything down. Gonna bring that up. Scale it down a little bit more to fit that section I made. And you are going to sit nicely in there. Now in our side view, this is quite far forward, so I'm just going to bring that back. Almost to where the spine silhouette should be. Might just drag that down just a tad. Okay, now we're going to jump into sculpt mode. Going to remesh this. A bit higher poly. There we go. Now I'm just using 0.4 in the strength when it comes to smoothing. Just in case your smoothing is changing the actual volume, the shape, too much. Okay, now I will come in with my grab tool and I will pull just that in, as well as that corner. Just to sort of sit in there. It's a little bit flat right now, but I really get rid of the head. Oh no, don't crash. Ooh. I accidentally hit the shading tab. I should save. Okay. Let's hide our head. There we go. Nice and easy. Bring that back later just for helping out with the neck. So let's jump back to the shoulder, sculpt. Now these are all simple volumes. There isn't really any creating shapes from nothing. You'll see a lot in sculpting videos. So I was going to pull that shoulder back and I'll push that slightly forward. I'll probably switch to my grab 2D. I'll just bring that forward a little bit more. I'll add a mirror modifier just so that I can see what two shoulders will actually look like. Switch to object mode. There we go. It's probably a little bit too wide in the side view. Let's Scale Y. Ball. Scale Y. About there. Next, I will create the pectoral, which shouldn't be too hard. So I'm going to copy the rib cage, bring it forward, scale it down just a tad, and I'll bring it slightly up on the Z axis. I'll grab my sculpting brushes, grab tool, and I'll keep it on the 2D for the time being. Push that up, push you down, and then I will grab the side. I want to bring it sort of where the shoulders are at the bottom. It's not exactly the easiest shape to keep in this sort of low poly situation. But it'll look something like that. I'll just flatten the front. And I'll bring you back just a tad. I'll switch to normal grab. And then I will remesh just so I can get a little bit more detail in here. Come in with my crease. Down the center. You can really start to see that pectoral shape. There we go. Nice and simple. So next, I'll define the crotch a little bit more. Actually, it might be better if I pop in a little bit of the leg. Let's think of a good way of doing that. Going to add a plane. I'll delete all the vertices. I will Control Shift right click, create a new vert here. Pull it straight down. And I'll put it slightly off. The particular reason why I'm doing it this way is because I'm going to put a skin modifier. Mark as root. And then I will add a subdivision. It's just a little bit of an easier way of controlling sort of cylinder. Put a cut right there. So I've just subdivided the actual verts. I have it set to a different button. Control A for scaling. Push that in. About there is pretty good. I'll probably want one more subdivision there. Pop you there. Just to give me a bit of a basis. Need to be pulled a bit further back, but that's fine. I'll switch into sculpt mode and take X-ray off. Make my brush a little bit bigger. And just in case you want to watch it on the side, I'll do that so there's no annotations in the way. Okay. So, before I do any sculpting here, I need to apply all the modifiers. Grab the top, and I will drag that in. Just clean up some of the volume. On the back, I'll probably push that in just a tiny bit. Something like that. Now I will grab my 2D grab. I really love Grab 2D. It's a fantastic brush. Just want to pull that slightly. Pop a mirror in there. Not too bad. Doing good, doing good. You've made it this far? Well, that's the basics of the body. It's not too bad. We'll switch into object mode. I'll select all. Shade smooth. Oh, I wonder if I can do auto smooth. Nah, it's not going to do that. Okay, shade smooth. Now, if I really want to bring this a bit more, I'll pop in some shoulder blades. Just copy the shoulder that we made. Go back on the Y. Come into sculpt mode. Just a normal grab brush. Pull that to the back. I'm making sure here to leave this sort of hollow. This is where the armpit will go, and if it's a bit more of like a hole going into the sides, it's much easier getting the right definition. And I will use clay strips just to sort of push that out. And then smooth. Grab, pull that up and into the top. Smooth that hollow. And from the back view, we'll grab just to get that right sort of scapular shape. It also looks like the position of the object might be a bit out. That's probably just because I moved it in object mode. So use mirror objects and select that sphere. There we go. I think it's probably worth it to edit this sphere, the rib cage, a little bit more. Sculpt. So I will come in with the crease brush, push that in just a tiny bit. It'll also give us a rough idea of where to put our clavicle. And from the back view, grab brush, we'll grab just under the sort of silhouette edge. Drag that up and slightly out. Yep. That's roughly what I want. Excellent. You know what? I'll add a butt. So I will go mesh. Cylinder would be nice. Yeah, I'll use a cylinder. Most people will probably use a sphere when it comes to modeling the butt cheeks. So the butt itself isn't actually a sphere per se. It can definitely look rounded. So I've got this cylinder here. I'm going to pop it on an angle. Scale that on the X. Slightly tilt it. Bring it out Y, and I will pop you about there. Switch into sculpt mode. I'll use grab 2D. I'll just bring that up. Nice height. Bring that in. Yep, I'm really happy with that. Let's add a mirror. Awesome. It'll get a bit more of that round pseudo-spherical shape once I remesh it and actually start sculpting it a little bit. But for the moment, simple shapes. Nice silhouette. In fact, I'll turn that off. I'll hide the head guide and switch this to flat. And I will switch you to black. So regardless of the direction, we can sort of make out that it's definitely a body. Though the butt comes out a little bit much. Just on that 3/4 view. Should probably be pushed in a tiny bit. No, it's a good 2D technique. Removing any of the details and looking at it as a silhouette. So we can definitely do that in 3D, and we definitely should. Okay. I think this is a good point where we can start putting in some detail. I think I'll start with the cylinder because I don't like that 3/4 view. So I will convert to mesh. This will just apply any of the modifiers that are on it, rather than going through and applying them one by one. Sculpt mode. So R to adjust the resolution of our remesh, and then Control R to actually remesh it. So I'm going to come in with smooth, but I'm going to lock my view into 3/4. Really need to turn on symmetry. I'm just ever so slightly coming in, smoothing just a couple of things. Still want it to retain most of that cylinder volume. Come in with a crease brush, just down the center. So it brings it in, grab, and I'll use 2D. That's looking much nicer. Not quite a spear. What I'll do, just so you can all see it. Definitely not a spear. Definitely the right sort of volumes. Definitely looks pretty good, especially from our 3/4 view now. Let's put that back. There'll be a few more details just once the legs start moving in to the butt cheeks and when we put them together. But we'll get there when we get there. Now, do I want to do the serratus anterior? I think it's probably a good idea to do them. I'll pull up a reference for that one. The serratus anterior comes sort of from the back to the front underneath our pectoral muscles going down our rib cage on the side. Should have prepared a reference beforehand. Image. You will do. That's fine. So I'll do it in annotations. So we have the rib cage. Why'd that get rid of it? That's weird. Switch to a different color. I would like to keep my annotations. Why are you disappearing? Okay, that's fine. I'll draw it really quickly and then undo it, I guess. Oh, can I convert you into grease pencil? Right, I can do that. There. Okay, so serratus anterior. It comes. So you've got a back muscle that sort of does this. Goes up underneath that armpit. Another reason why we sort of want that hollow. But the serratus is specifically, if we draw it like this, it is muscles that come around the front. You'll definitely see this on either very skinny people or very bulky, muscly people. It's a bit of a volume filler in our case. It's not necessary if we're doing stylized modeling. So in the case of like anime models, semi-realistic, it's probably not worthwhile to get this detailed. But it's a nice to know thing. So we'll do it anyway. Get rid of all of you. There we go. Now, I think I'll do the skin modifier technique that I was doing before. Plane, tab, delete all verts. Go R. We've now got a vert center, so I'll just bring that out. Now, I'll show you a secret technique. So I'm going to turn on snapping, this magnet up here. Switch to face project and align rotation to target. So now, if I extrude, it'll snap onto any volumes underneath it. Here, if I want to go to the shoulder, it's very useful for retopology and controlling your edge if you need something really, really tight. But anyhow, let's put you there. Duplicate, I'll pop you there. Duplicate again, but then I'll rotate you a little bit. And I will do one more. Say there. Let me push you up a little bit. Should be good. Tuck you in a bit. Like that. Okay, I'll go skin modifier. Doesn't really help me at the moment. Let's bring you down. X-ray. So I need to mark root across the end verts on each of these. Add a subdivision just to make it a little bit easier to read. Turn you off. Thin that out a little bit, puff you up. So these volumes will increase a little bit once I start to actually sculpt them a little bit. These are just placements. Now, I am choosing a bit of a stylistic approach. I believe there is 6 or 7 of these muscles, but 4 is nice enough and it's readable for people to actually go, oh, okay, I know what that is. Or, oh yeah, that looks right. So let's apply that. So convert to mesh, auto apply all my meshes. I'll jump into sculpt mode, grab, bring those bit, grab my inflate. And I can use control, hold down the control, and run that over the edges to sort of thin them out. So when you hold control with a sculpting brush, it reverses what it would do. So if you inflate with an inflate brush, you hold control down, it'll deflate, just in case. Push those up a bit more. Grab. I just want to drag them out just a tiny bit. Those in. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. Too fast on the back. Add a mirror. That is pretty good. I think I'll add a arm next. We are now 45 minutes in. Nothing extremely hard, no complex sculpting, we're not bringing any shapes out of nothing. Of course we can, but I think way too many people try jumping in and doing that, rather than trying to understand symbol volumes. So, let's make that arm. I'm going to do a skin modifier approach again. Just really like it. Nice easy way to control things. Day, plane, tab, all, delete, vertices. And I'll uncheck the magnet. And my vert's locking there, so I'll just move it a bit more in. Shoot you to there, to there. Just a nice rough guide of where I want the elbow and the wrist. Probably won't get into sculpting of hands or feet, at least not in this. It's an extremely complex sort of piece of anatomy. You can still do it in a simple manner. I made another video about that, but that was polymodeling. And hands are a little bit harder than what we're actually doing at the moment. So I'll probably dedicate an entire video to it and see how simple I can break it down. Okay, so let's add a skin modifier and a subdivision. Way too thick. Way too thick. Select everything, Control A to deflate. I think that's about good. I'll deflate the wrist a little bit more. And I will inflate that one a bit more. So awesome thing with skin modifier, I can just subdivide the entire line I want. So I can select all of them, subdivide. I have it on my Q key, as I mentioned before, just a shortcut. Now I've got some extra control points there and there, which means I can inflate there, and I'll probably slide you up a little bit. Pop that a little bit bigger, push that down. Add a mirror just so we can see it in the whole grand scheme of things. Not too bad, not too bad. I will grab all of those verts. And our elbow one, I'll switch the pivot point from bounding to active element. Our elbow is the active element, indicated by the white dot. Rotate the Z-axis just to slightly tilt that in, as if it were a proper elbow. I'll probably add a spear or something similar to the shoulder, just to indicate there's a hard edge where that bone sticks out. But overall, pretty happy, pretty happy. Going good so far. So I will convert to mesh. Let's take you off X-ray. Now, I don't know if it's a little difficult when it comes to seeing with all the annotations. I do wish there was a Oh, there is an opacity slider. Whoops. My bad, guys. Sorry about that. Annotations isn't really something I do a whole lot. Okay, so now that I've got you, let's jump into sculpt mode. Do the grab. Just want to bring that up just a tiny bit more. So when we're talking about the arm, we can think of it as a chain where it goes flat, thin, wide, thin, wide. So we tend to have this section just here inflated a bit more on the front view. Might have just a tiny bit here. It'll go flat at the elbow. I'll just push that in a bit. Use grab 2D. And then I will drag you a little bit. Doesn't matter on this side at the moment. I'll just mirror it. Sorry, symmetrize it in a second. Not too fussed with that one. I'll pull you out. Flatten that. Roughly like that. I probably want to grab that and push that up slightly. So when I'm talking about that chain, what I mean is we have one chain link here. Have another one there just to indicate elbow. Up again. And we'll thin out there for the wrist. Our sort of shoulder is going to make that link up there. So it'll go flat, like that. Drop down a little bit when it comes to there. Come up, then back down. It's a little hard to describe volume-wise outside of interlocking chain links, even though sometimes it might not quite feel like it, especially on more petite characters. But anyhow, let's continue on. Let's get rid of you since we don't need that annotation. I will cry if I got rid of all my annotations there. I'm gonna jump back over to the hips, hip bones. Switch to sculpt mode. I just want to tuck them in a little bit more. I'll probably push that just a bit more. So cool thing, if you hold control with a grab brush, normally you would expect it to do the opposite of pulling it in the direction that you want. But oddly enough, it pushes it in the direction of the normal. It's just a weird thing with the brush. Just not doing quite what you would expect. But anyhow, it's a cool thing. I like it. Awesome. So I'm going to grab my trim. No, I'll do the multiplane scrape. I'm just cleaning up that edge. Just want that to come in there and sort of flatten that. Okay, I'm happy with that. I think now is a good time to see how that looks with the head. Is that the old one that I made? Okay, that's the proportion guide. So I've still got the old head from before I retopologized it. Let's hide you. So it's in the right spot. I probably need to thin out the neck a little bit. But let's make this flat, jump into black. We can definitely make out that there's a person. There's a nice shape. We can see on the side view that we've got some really nice curves, even though we haven't done a whole lot. Got really nice form where it's going in, out, in, out. A little bit of the shoulder there, out, back, there. Probably curve that just a tiny bit more. We can see really nice silhouette. Got nice, thick legs. Yes, that is thick with a K. Once we start actually doing some sculpting and like really drilling into the details, we'll make these sort of hips much sharper. We'll clean up that. We'll start looking at adding details. What's the chest? We'll put our belly button right there. So I mentioned this right at the start when we were talking about the hips and the rib cage. So rib cage, roughly there. And our hips are there. So we can see there's a line at the top of our hips and our rib cage, if we draw one there. Typically speaking, you'll probably put the belly button in between them. Changes slightly when we alter our proportions or if there's an excess amount of fat, say in that area, it might pull down the location of that belly button a little bit. Gravity. Logically, it makes a lot of sense. If they're very thin, petite, that belly button is probably going to sit like right in between the ribs and the hips. So it's a good tip when you're making characters to think about how gravity might affect the volume. Simple shapes. Stomach, big sphere. How's that going to pull down against the skeletal frame? Breasts are the same. So the larger they are, the more gravity is going to pull them down. It's something that you want to keep in consideration. Speaking of which, with breasts, I highly recommend do not remesh them into the actual body. Keep them separate. unless you are making a sculpt that has no need or retopology or anything like that, and sure, I would 100% recommend it. Unfortunately, when you are sculpting volumes like breasts, if you need to edit them or smooth how they join to the body, it becomes really awkward and very easy to lose the correct volume that you had previously. Highly recommend when you make them, don't merge them into anything. Same with legs, arms. You can keep shoulders, you can keep the rib cage. Everything else should be pretty good, but just things that you don't want to deal with where it's hard to join and you might have to change the volume later, keep them separate. Anyhow, let's jump back in. Let's get rid of all of these. Don't need you anymore. I should probably symmetrize that arm so that we can actually get a picture of both sides. So in sculpt mode, you can click just here next to the XYZ axes for mirroring. You've got symmetrize. I usually have it set to +X to -X because I tend to work more on the right side rather than left. Personal preference. Symmetrize, and we can see that it brings the details from the right half of the Z-axis over onto the left. Even though it's mirroring on the Z-axis, the blue line is just what I'm referring to as the spot where we're looking at that's going to be mirrored. Okay. So, how long have we been going for? 1 hour and 2 minutes. I think I'll break it off here. This video might be a two-parter. So, this is a nice, easy place to get to. If we take into account that I've been working this all out as I go and making it up on the spot, plus trying to explain my thought process, realistically, you can get to this sort of position 20, 30 minutes if you know what you're doing and just sort of follow that sort of process of let's put a simple shape here, let's build it up. Whereas if you are sculpting details from the start, pulling objects out from nowhere, you focus too much on small details and then you're not getting your proportions right, and then everything just becomes very muddled and it's very complex. Most people that can do it from nothing have years of experience, and it's a point that I think a lot of people forget, especially when they're trying sculpting for the first time. Anyhow, I will see you all next time. Hopefully part 2 doesn't take super long to come out. If you have any thoughts, apart from making it up on the spot and just sharing my thoughts as I go, let me know. Be happy to hear. Otherwise, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Thank you.